You just flawlessly executed a massive presentation at work, navigated a complex interpersonal conflict, and made high-stakes financial choices with total confidence. But now it is evening. You are staring blankly at your phone on the couch, entirely incapable of deciding what to order for dinner. The world calls this exhaustion or laziness. Science calls it low-stakes paralysis. This is actually a highly evolved feature of your motivation economics. Today, we will explore how to bypass this biological freeze and turn decision fatigue into decisive forward momentum. It is wildly frustrating to handle major life transitions effortlessly, only to freeze when a friend texts to ask if you are free on Thursday. You know the answer is yes. Replying would take exactly 4 seconds and 0 physical effort. Yet you lock your phone and let the message sit there for 3 days. You feel a mounting sense of guilt, but from a psychological perspective, you are not failing. Your brain is simply a ruthless energy conservation machine. It views cognitive effort as an extremely expensive resource and fiercely guards its analytical abilities. When you face a major decision, like moving across the country, the stakes are obvious. The potential rewards are high. Your brain willingly spends the metabolic energy to deeply analyze the situation. But when you face a low-stakes choice like picking a streaming show, your brain tries to use fast, automatic thinking. Modern life has ruined this. You are no longer choosing between a couple of basic options. You are staring at thousands of titles, reviews, and categories. The mental effort required has skyrocketed, but the actual reward remains incredibly low. This is exactly where the expected value of control theory kicks in. A specific region of your brain acts as a biological accountant. Before you make any choice, it calculates a strict formula. It multiplies the value of the goal by the probability of success and then subtracts the cost of mental effort. When you try to pick a font for an internal memo, the value of the goal is 0. The accountant runs the numbers, sees a massive negative return on investment, and denies you the executive function required to execute the simple task. We can bypass this biological accountant by deploying a strategy called satisficing. Our modern brains are trapped acting like maximizers, people who must intensely examine every option to ensure the absolute perfect choice. Maximizing demands massive energy for a tiny reward, which causes the freeze. To break it, establish a good enough baseline. Before opening an app, commit to choosing the first option that hits an 80% approval threshold in your mind. Remind yourself that the optimal choice is actually the one that costs the least amount of mental energy. Let us apply this economic logic back to that unanswered text message. Why does a simple reply trigger intense social paralysis? It comes down to the friction of task switching. Even if you are just mindlessly scrolling social media, your brain has settled into a comfortable groove. Answering a text requires you to pull up your schedule, formulate an appropriate tone, and anticipate the inevitable follow-up message. The brain calculates the expected value. It decides the effort-to-reward ratio is incredibly poor and whispers for you to simply handle it later. But ignoring that simple text creates an accidental cognitive trap called the Zeigarnik effect. This is a psychological principle stating that people remember interrupted or incomplete tasks much more vividly than completed ones. By refusing to spend the 2 seconds required to text back, your brain leaves a mental tab open in the background. As the days pass, the low-stakes task accumulates massive emotional interest. What was once a minor reply rapidly morphs into a monumental hurdle of guilt and social anxiety, artificially raising the stakes of a basic interaction. To break this specific loop, you have to completely flip the text-back narrative in your mind. You must artificially change the reward structure. Instead of viewing a reply as a chore that opens the door to unwanted, prolonged communication, view the closure of the communication as the actual reward. Your goal is not to socialize. Your goal is simply to close the mental tab to free up working memory in your head. When you focus solely on the relief of closure, the motivation economics suddenly begin to balance out, and physical action naturally follows. This same economic imbalance explains why decision fatigue hits hardest at the end of the day. Why does the dinner dilemma almost exclusively happen at 6 in the evening instead of 9 in the morning? Every single day, you make tens of thousands of remotely conscious decisions. Hit snooze or wake up. Send the email now or wait. Agree with your boss or push back. By the time evening arrives, your prefrontal cortex is completely drained. This is the primary brain region responsible for logical reasoning, intense planning, and managing your impulse control. When that executive center is exhausted, the brain looks at the complex math of picking dinner and simply shuts down entirely. You have to balance competing variables like your current budget, health goals, delivery times, and specific cravings. Your daily allotment of precision has already been spent on high-stakes work or complex family issues. This is why people suffering from decision fatigue will often choose a drastically suboptimal outcome. They will eat a handful of plain crackers or go to sleep completely hungry to avoid making one more agonizing choice. The most effective way to solve evening decision fatigue is through the strategy of strict habituation. You bypass the cognitive cost by removing the decision entirely. There is a reason prominent leaders wear the exact same uniform every day. It cleanly eliminates a low-stakes morning choice. You can apply this through meal cycling. Assign specific meals to specific days. Tuesday is always tacos. Wednesday is always pasta. By turning a daily choice into a rigid, non-negotiable rule, you bypass the biological accountant. The exhausting decision is already made for you. This exact same logic applies to task initiation. Putting away a pile of laundry or emptying the dishwasher can feel like trying to move a massive boulder. Motivation is a neurochemical process driven primarily by dopamine. Dopamine is the anticipation and motivation chemical. It drives seeking behavior. When you face a meaningful task, the brain predicts a massive influx of dopamine upon completion. This chemical spike physically compels you to get up and initiate the task. It provides the biological spark necessary to shift your body from a state of resting into motion. But what is the dopamine reward for putting a single pair of socks into a drawer? It is virtually non-existent. Because the chore is so menial and unrewarding, your brain does not release the chemical spark necessary to initiate movement. You logically know the task is incredibly easy. You know it will only take 2 minutes of your time. But because your brain relies on dopamine to drive action, the total lack of reward leaves you physically stuck. You are essentially a high-performance engine trying to turn over without a working spark plug. When your brain outright refuses to initiate a low-stakes chore, you must artificially inflate the reward using a technique called temptation bundling. You deliberately attach a highly engaging stimulus to the avoidance behavior. For example, you are only allowed to listen to your favorite thrilling true crime podcast while you are actively folding the laundry. Your brain immediately associates the mundane task with a high dopamine reward. The economic equation finally balances out. The chemical spark fires successfully, and the physical paralysis breaks almost instantly. The low-stakes paralysis hook is incredibly frustrating in a modern society that demands rapid action and relentless productivity at all times. We constantly berate ourselves for staring blankly at a menu or leaving a close friend on red. We automatically assume we are broken, undisciplined, or severely lacking in willpower. But the psychological reality paints a much more forgiving picture. Your brain is an absolute masterpiece of biological engineering. It is meticulously designed to keep you functioning through massive, legitimate threats and highly complex, real-world stakes. To achieve that lifelong survival, It must act as a ruthless economic manager. When your brain freezes over a low-stakes choice, it is not failing you at all. It is actively protecting you. It looks at a modern world that demands intense cognitive labour for utterly meaningless rewards, and it firmly says no. It is saving your precision for the things that actually matter. Recognizing this motivation economics model allows you to stop fighting your own natural accounting systems and start working in harmony with your biological design. You can automate the mundane, embrace the good enough baseline, and finally realize that sometimes the hardest choice to make is the one that simply does not matter. Here is your challenge for today. Pick exactly one low-stakes friction point, like picking a movie tonight or replying to a stale text message. Commit right now to applying the satisficing rule. Give it 80% effort, hit send or click play, and reclaim your cognitive energy for the heavy lifting. End the freeze by giving yourself permission to be beautifully average.